Well, as the hosts are starting to figure out what's going on, the show gets more intense and compelling than ever. Hey guys, here for Westworld, Season 1, Episode 4, Dissonance Theory, and I was definitely looking forward to this episode. As you guys may have imagined, I have been loving the show so far. I think every episode they've really been doing a great job, but I do think that they haven't really made an episode that is as good as the first one, and this episode definitely was. For me, this was the best episode since the first episode. I think this episode was shocking. It gave us more insight into what's going on, and overall, the show overall is just getting more and more intense. I really do love where we're headed, and there were definitely some highlight scenes this episode, but let's just get into this episode because, as usual, there's a lot to talk about. Just Westworld in general, there's always so much going on, and I really do love that. And the show's getting more and more complicated by the minute, and I'm definitely all for it, but let's just get into it. We start off with Bernard. He's with Dolores. They're having another one of their little talks, as he calls it, and asks her if she knows where she is. She says that she's in a dream. He asks her if she knows what happened before this, and she talks about her parents being slaughtered by the bandits, and he tells her to limit her emotional effect. She does his ass, and he asks her what happened next. She says that they killed them. Then she ran. Everyone she cares about is gone, and it hurts so badly, and he says that he can make that feeling go away if she'd like, and she asks why he thinks she'd like that since the pain and the loss is all she has left. He thinks the grief will make someone smaller inside, like his heart will collapse in on itself, but it doesn't. She feels spaces opening up inside of her, like a building with rooms of which she's never explored, and Evan Rachel would absolutely kill it in this scene. She, in general, is doing such a great job with this character, and she's taking something like, a robot, who's supposed to feel very emotionless, and she's giving an emotion, and I think she's doing a great job with that. And he asked her if they wrote that for her. She says that some of it they did, but most of it she adapted from a scripted dialogue about love. So he's starting to realize that she's really starting to think of this stuff on her own. She asks if there's something wrong with the thought she's having. He sits down, says no, but he's the only one making these decisions. She asks if he can help her, and he asks what it is she wants. She says she doesn't know, but she thinks that there's something wrong with this world hiding underneath, or there's something wrong with her, and she may be losing her mind. He says there's something he'd like her to try. It's a game secret. It's called the Maze, and she asks what kind of game it is. He says very special one. The goal is to find the center of it all. She can do it, and if she can do it, then maybe she can be free, and she says that she wants to be free. So we've heard about the maze before, and I definitely think that the way the season is going, the end of the season is going to be the maze. We're going to get to the maze. We're going to start to see everyone getting there. There's definitely something going on with the maze. We don't really know what it's about, but there's definitely something going on there, and the more the show goes on, the more they're revealing more about the maze, but I can't wait to find out really what's going on there. There's clearly something going on with the maze that ties all of these hosts to it, and just everything going on in Westworld to it, and I don't really know what that's all about now. But she wakes up the next day in a field with a gun in her hands. William gives her coffee. She thanks him. And we see, again, she doesn't really know what's going on there. So Maeve is then with Clementine, who gives her a penny for her thoughts. Maeve asks her if she's ever had something on the tip of her tongue. The harder she tried to remember it, the more it slipped away. So Clementine says that most things are on the tip of her tongue. She's happy to slip away, except that cowpoke from Abilene, which we get the sense that there was this guy that she clearly had sex with that had a really nice dick or something like that. I mean, Clementine says she should have been paying him the way he used it, and Maeve then starts to hear everything distorted. Clementine asks her what's wrong. I thought that she was hallucinating. I thought that's what was going on, that, Arnold was getting into her head, and that she was, again, I'm willing to assume that's Arnold, but she hears buzzing, and Maeve says that there's something in her eye. Suddenly, they're both killed by two of the guests. Such just an abrupt scene, but again, it shows how casual this is to the guests, and that's something I think we really do get into in this episode, is how casual Westworld is to the guests, but how non-casual their lives really are, and although the Westworld staff clean up the saloon, they repair Maeve, she still, for some reason, has a vague recollection that something happened. And she returns to her room, she looks at where she was shot. While her body is fine, she notices a drop of blood on her undergarments and realizes her hallucination was in fact real, and this pretty much is what we got from episode 2 with Maeve, reliving her past life. The difference is that we already saw this happen, and Maeve draws a quick sketch of the men in containment suits who came to find her. She goes to hide it, only to discover that she's drawn the man several times before, and we don't know who this is, but right off the bat, I was very compelled to this. I really do like where Maeve's plot is headed. Just, Maeve is someone who, she can tell that there's something going on. She definitely is smart in that regard, and I like seeing that Maeve already is starting to catch on. I really do like the way that's done. I like that most of the hosts are starting to catch on. I don't want this to be a slow burn show, and the show is slow, but it's slow and it needs to be, and it doesn't really do a lot of these reveals very slow, and I think that's something that they do pretty well. I don't want this to be a show that waits till a bunch of episodes to do things, and I like the show isn't doing that. I think it makes sense for the, the host to start to understand what's going on, so I really do like the way it was done. But we then see Elsie tells Colin about the stray host and says she wouldn't describe what he did as normal host behavior. Colin says she's describing it as within normal parameters, and Elsie says it didn't hurt them. Its behavior was unconventional, and it is possible it's a manifestation of its Samaritan reflect, because of course we know everything about Orion, and Colin says that it's possible that behavior takes a propriety approach to problems like this to avoid having to admit when they fuck up. She asks if they have any ideas what caused it to go off loop. Elsie says they don't, but she's hoping to recover some of its cognition. They managed to stabilize it. It's wetware before there was too much decomposition, and they show it to Bernard, and Colin asks if there's any hope of actually extracting something from this. Bernard says that they can try, and Colin makes it clear she wants her team to take over. Elsie's outraged, if she wants to figure out what went wrong, they need to be able to access it. Colin assures her QA will handle it from now, and she asks Bernard if that's going to be a problem. He says they all have work on their hands, and if she wants to take this one, fine, but she just get them a copy of the postmortem when it's done. Something that Westworld does so well is the way it focuses on character, and I think this scene between Elsie and Bernard just really shows how different those two characters are, but also how similar they really are, and I really did love that. We see Elsie, after what happened with Colin, she goes to Bernard and says she always figured he gave her this job because she speaks her mind. He says that he did. She says she would have preferred he not show up at all if the first thing he's going to do is cave, because he clearly is not willing to listen to her, and he says that they think they're not telling them something. She says they're not, there is clearly a pattern of behavior. There was Abernathy, and now there's this. So she really is starting to get into the habit that there's definitely something going on here. This isn't just a glitch. There's clearly something more going on that they're not seeing, and she's got hosts hearing voices, climbing mountaintops to consult her astrological charity. This is not a glitch, and for some reason, he doesn't want her to tell anyone. She feels like everyone has an agenda except for her, and I would agree with that. I mean, Elsie seems to be the only character that we don't really know why she's here. Why is she here, really? And he tells her he remembers when he first started working. The hosts seem very lifelike, and it causes him to read things into their behaviors. She says to not be patronizing, and he says that the hosts don't read things, she does, and he says it's not Orion, since there are 3 stars in Orion's belt and not 4, and this scene in general, they just did such a great job of showing that, Elsie is someone who I'm willing to assume has been working there not that long, and she clearly does care about the host, and she sees them in this human way, and I think Bernard does too, but he's very experienced, he's seen it all, he's been with Ford for the longest time, he knows how to function there, and he really is, under the guise that there's nothing going on, but I think in general Bernard does know something's going on. We definitely do see that here. So Dolores goes to William, who hands Dolores a coat, then tells Logan that they need to bring her back to Sweetwater. Logan asks if he's kidding. William says that he knows she doesn't belong out there, and the bounty hunter says they leave now, that no good outlaw, Slim Miller, is sure to evade their ground, and Logan says that he was the one who dragged him on this bounty hunt. The least they're going to do is see it through, and William says they can't take her on a bounty hunt. Logan says if he's so confused of her well-being, he can just blow her brains out and the park will come hither, and William tells him to stop killing or fuck everything. Logan says he thinks that Dolores is part of the Westworld experience, says that if the park can give William a sense of purpose, their company needs to up their ownership stake in the park, and William says the trip was about welcoming him to the family. This is business. Logan says that with their family, everything is business, and you can definitely tell that Logan, again, he's very experienced, he knows what it's like to be in the park, while William, he's the very much more human one, and I really do like the way the story is playing out. Very interesting so far. So the Man in Black and Lawrence are then searching for the entrance to the maze, we find out, and we finally realize why the Man in Black is on this search in the first place. Lawrence is upset at the fact that he killed his entire family over some maze. He asks what he hopes to find, and the Man in Black says the whole world is a story, and he wants to find out how Westworld's story ends and knows what it all means. Remember, nobody's ever gotten to the end. Even Ford doesn't know how it ends. Nobody knows how Westworld ends, and the Man in Black is destined to find an ending. He doesn't care how long it takes him. He doesn't care what he has to do. He will do what he can to find an ending. And overall, I think it's very interesting. I think they showed that very well. And it makes his character that much more compelling, knowing what he really wants to do. It shows why he's taking all these extreme measures. It shows why he's treating everyone like shit. He doesn't care about them. He's going to do it. He thinks that he's going to do whatever he can to conquer Westworld and see the way it ends, because he needs to feel that fulfillment. And in order for him to feel content with himself, he needs to know how it ends. And the way it's starting to become like an obsession, I think, is overall very interesting. It makes his character even more compelling than I already thought he was. The Man in Black was kind of a blank slate, but this really made me love his character more, and I think he did a really good job with that. So Lawrence says that this is why he never learned to read. He tells him to forget about the sneak and head to Pariah, his friends that there can help them. And the Man in Black says his friends have nothing he's looking for, not on this trip. He then sees a woman with an elaborate snake tattoo bathing in the river. He realizes that she must be related to the maze, and he goes up to her, says that they were admiring her tattoo and would love to know the story behind it. She says she likes his hat. Maybe she'll keep it in the horse. Maybe she'll keep it. The horses can have, the rest of them, and he asks how they haven't met and asks where she's headed. She says she's going to retrieve something of great value. He says she looks a little short-handed. He quickly offers to join her by literally killing two of her men, and she really does not care that much about it. I think overall her character is very interesting. We'll talk about more where she's going to go, but I thought overall that was interesting. So in Westworld's control center, Stubbs is alerted that Dolores is deviating from her loop. Stubbs says to flag her and pull her from the park to make sure she's not exhibiting deviant behavior, because obviously she's going against what they're telling her to do. Dolores then sees Lawrence's daughter sitting in the middle of a small town, asks her where she's from. His daughter says the same as her, asks her to remember, and points to a drawing of the maze in the dirt. And a sheriff, probably from someone from Westworld staff, immediately walks up to her, tries to take her away, obviously because he's trying to get her on the right path, but Dolores refuses, letting him know her father is dead and she's not going back. William intervenes, says that Dolores is not lost, she is with him, causing his staff to leave, because as we know, the guests are the ones that are supposed to change the story. The story is supposed to go the same formulaic way until the guests decide to change it, and because William's a guest, that leaves this guy nothing to do. And I like the way that William really is helping her out. I think their relationship overall is very interesting. William tells her they got to lead on Slim. She can stay there if she wants. He can just circle back and get her. She says she needs to keep going, and I love the way that Dolores actually wants to fight. I like that she's not, just some damsel in distress. She's already come so far from episodes 1 to 4, and I really do love that. So the Man in Black and Lawrence see the woman's gang. Lawrence says she needs to make certain this thing they're looking for is what they think it is. She says she signaled the information is good. They get the signal and go to her, and clearly, we're trying to figure out what's going on there. So that night, Dolores says she's sorry if she caused trouble between him and Logan. He says he's glad she found them because he didn't get a chance to ask her where she's headed, but Dolores isn't really quite sure, and he says he figured that they kept them in zones or paths, and she says she used to think that there was a path for everyone, and now she feels like she never asked for where that path was taking her, which is true. I mean, throughout the entire story, she's saying, I have a path, but she didn't really know. She tells him a story that her father used to tell her about the steer. He asks how she's going to find her way now. She says she's not sure. He understands that she sometimes thinks that something is calling her, telling her that there's a place for her beyond all this. He says he gets that feeling and asks if she really doesn't want to go back to her old life. And I love the way that these two can really sympathize with each other. Like Logan said, William's someone who doesn't really know what he wants to do either. He doesn't really have much of a future. He needs to find his purpose, and I like the way that he is giving Dolores one too. She has a hallucination, though, about one of the many times she died and was taken by Westworld's body men. He asks her if she's alright, tells her to go back to the fire, and overall, I love the way that these two are bonding. One of the most compelling things about this episode and the series so far by far. So then we get this really interesting scene with the Man in Black. What I really loved about this scene is that it's showing that the Man in Black does have a life outside of Westworld. It's just that we haven't really seen it, and that goes for many of the guests. We know that these guests are, in fact, guests. They are people. They don't just exist within Westworld, and from that, they do have other lives, and we see that with the Man in Black here. He's approached by two guests who wanted to thank him for the foundation he runs back in the real world, but he immediately shuts them down and tells them that this is vacation. We don't know what the Man in Black does does, but I'm getting the sense it's a very tireless, effortless, tireless job that obviously requires a lot of effort, and something that he is very famous for, or infamous for, we don't really know. He approaches the one with the snake tattoo, says they'll finish the question she's on. They're trying the infamous bandit Hector out of prison, we find out, but in return, he wants the story behind her tattoo. He then tells her about Arnold, the co-founder of Westworld, and says that he thinks that Arnold left a final story, one with real stakes and violence, and that's the reason why no one has been able to find it, because Ford's not the one that made it. It was Arnold that made it, and it makes perfect sense. I mean, we know that Arnold went on his own, and the next morning, the Man in Black pulls off his grand prison break by posing as a prisoner. He uses Lawrence as bait, which he agrees to after the Man in Black offers him freedom, and again, I love how reluctant Lawrence is in this episode, because Lawrence really is grieving a lot throughout this episode. I mean, think about it, his whole family was killed, and I like the way he did agree to it. Lawrence is led to a firing squad while the Man in Black uses exploding cigars to bust Hector out of their cell. The Man in Black then shoots up the prison. He rescues Lawrence before he can be executed, and having successfully rescued Hector, the Man in Black finds out the backstory on the Snake Woman's tattoo. She says that when she was 7, that Wyatt's men rolled into town, masked men, deviled horns, they killed everyone, men, women, children, even the animals. They gutted her mother from her warm jaw to her sex, and she has to paint her blood all over her skin to make sure that they would think that she was dead. And so kind of like The Walking Dead almost, where if they think she's dead, you know, if she is blow over, they'll think she's dead. So every time she hunts one of Wyatt's men down, she colors her tattoo with their blood, which is really creepy, but it makes sense. It's kind of like a satisfying thing for her, and the Man in Black seems to recognize her tattoo, the name, and gives a little smirk. Maeve and Clementine, the watch a group of natives watch. So overall, I think that's interesting, the way he has this connection to Wyatt. We don't really know what that's about, but especially because they just created Wyatt, the fact that he recognizes that name is overall really interesting. So Maeve and Clementine watch a group of natives walk through towns. One of the children drops a toy, which reminds Maeve of the Westworld employees in the hazmat suits. A man tells her it's a part of their religion, and no one is going to tell her about that. So clearly there's some more going on there. Later that day, Clementine's talking to a guest. Maeve says she's seen the tall one before sitting in the window of post offices, and Clementine asks if she thinks that they're there for something. Maeve says she thinks they're interested then more than a turn at Franny's backside. She thinks that he rides with Hector, and Clementine mentions that she's heard of a bandit named Hector who lives in the wilderness with the natives, and this gives Maeve an idea about where to head next. We don't know what she's talking about. We find out a little bit later, and we'll get into that in a second. So Colin then goes to Bernard, who asks if she's taking off. He says he gave her what she needed. He asks if that's all. He's good for letting off stress, and she says that he's a master of observation and says tomorrow she has to talk to Ford. He's creating chaos in the park, and the board will be descending at any moment, and she needs to buy some time. He says that it's best to not show him she's nervous or defensive, and she says that she has nothing to be defensive about. He tells her not to cross her arms. It's an ancient instinct. The belly is the most vulnerable part of any animal. She says it's sexy being compared to a frightening beast, and he says she's found the posture that she's looking for. She says sometimes he can actually be quite charming. She kisses him, and she then visits Ford, and we get this amazing scene between Ford and Cullen. I mean, Ford has been very reserved, so far at least. You know, he's been very reserved. He's been calculating, he definitely has been passionate, but he's been very reserved for the most part. But you're definitely starting to see that there definitely is a madman in there. I mean, Ford in general is a madman. There's a reason why they know a lot about him, and if this does not tell me that Ford is going to be our villain for the show, I don't know what will. But she visits Ford. He's in the middle of excavating a massive amount of land for his new storyline. He asks if the neighbors have complained. She says that it's safe to say they're asking questions. He says the rocks would prefer not to move, but they shall move them. And she says maybe she can help him with that. Says the narrative that he's creating is clearly a massive endeavor, and if he needs more time, she's sure, that she would be happy to oblige. So she's willing to give her services and help him, but he says he's sure the board won't let him be happy to delay indefinitely. He then takes her to this really lavish, fancy restaurant, says that she's imagined he got mad, lost his way. She says they're simply concerned about the extent of the change he's making to protect his legacy. He says she doesn't like this place very much. He's seen many of them come and go over the years. He can tell the ones who enjoy their time there and the ones who don't. And she says she admires it, the audacity of it. She's forgotten how beautiful it is. She admired it as a child, and she thinks they even sat at the same table. So she says when she started working there, she realized that it wasn't going to be a place she'd enjoy. He says in the beginning he imagined things would be perfectly balanced. He even had a bet with Arnold to that effect, and they made up 100 hopeful storylines that no one took up on them, and he lost the bet. So he says Arnold always had a somewhat dim view of people. He preferred the host. He begged him to not let people like her and the money man, kind of like William right now. William kind of is this version of Arnold, and he told him it'd be fine, that they didn't understand what they were paying for. It's not a business venture or a theme park, but an entire world. They designed every inch of it, every blade of grass in there. They were gods, and she was merely one of their guests. So she asks how that felt for Arnold, and he lets her know how he went mad. He hasn't. He has always seen things very clearly. She says this is the table she sat at with her parents, and this is the chair that she sat in. He says that they know everything about their guests, and as they know everything about their employees, tells her to be careful with Bernard. He has a sensitive disposition. Anthony Hopkins, like I said, just kill it in this scene. There have been many of her over the years, and they have almost always found a way to make it work. Tells her not to get in his way. She says the board will agree with her. They will be sending a representative, and he says they already have, so you can tell that he's definitely one step ahead of her. He thought that they already told her. He says she can tell the board that his narrative will be completed on time, and it won't be retrospective, as they have all feared. He then sends one of his giant earth movers to literally plow down the restaurant, and tells her he's not the sentimental type, and essentially tells her to stay out of his way. Just a really intense scene. It shows how far Ford is willing to go. It shows how passionate he is about this, and really just shows how maniacal and insane this man really is. So then we get to what is by far one of the highlights of the episode. We see Dolores tells William that Holden says that this Slim's got a whole gang with him, so he needs her to stay there, and she says if he's outnumbered, the last thing he needs is someone standing by. She can't help, and he tells her it doesn't make sense to her, but he can't get her in there, but she can. And I like the way that, again, he is talking to her in a human way. He's not treating her like shit. He's not treating her like garbage. He sees her in the way that Arnold did, and he'd hate to see it happen. He tells her to stay there, be safe. He goes to Logan and Holden, and Logan says to William if he doesn't bang her by tomorrow, he's calling dibs. Holden tells them there's going to be a bag of nails in there. Slim and his boys got them outnumbered, and on top of that, there's a family that runs this place. Good people, and they need to make sure that he doesn't try to risk reward. They go in guns blazing, although Logan seems to definitely be enjoying himself too much. We see Lawrence then tells the man in black he's not one to, and very well done seeing the way it was done. I mean, just the way they were gunning it and all those men was pretty crazy. But Lawrence tells the man in black he's not one to complain, but this is just foolhardy town men taking on Wyatt. The man in black tells him to keep talking. He's going to take the horse back, and Lawrence says Wyatt's group just wiped out the last group that went seeking them out, and here they are riding right after them. He's just trying to convince him not to get himself and him as a bystander killed. The man in black, of course, tells him that he can't be killed. Of course, he's a guest, and him and Lawrence then come across Teddy, who's been tied up to a tree by Wyatt. Teddy asks the man in black to kill him, but the man in black comes him down instead. Hence the first episode where Teddy is actually not killed. I thought it was interesting that they actually didn't kill him off in this episode. He's died in every episode before, so I was surprised he didn't die here. But no, he actually did live, and I think it made sense, definitely. So Slim says to let him out of this, and Logan says the reward is dead or alive. Holden says it's always best to bring him in alive, and Logan asks if they can at least gag him. Holden says it's not a bad idea. He gets off the horse, and Slim continues to beg. Logan then turns on their sheriff guide and literally kills Holden right then and there, and this obviously really pisses off William. William curses out. He has no idea what Logan is doing. Logan says he has no idea how lucky they just got. William says he just shot an innocent man, and Logan says he's a robot just like Slim and Dolores, except that Slim works for Alonzo, who actually has a ticket to the best ride in the park. And when Dolores tries to intervene, Logan literally threatens to shoot her. Like, he just does not care. To him, again, these are nothing but androids, and he's going to treat them like androids. But William steps in once again. Logan tries to convince William to go black hat with him. He got to save the girl, now get him a little something. And what he means by black hat is go dark with me, treat them like treat them like they're shit. And William asks what his problem is, says that the second they get away from the real world, he turns into an evil prick, and Logan laughs at that, remarks that it's a fucking game, as if he's still trying to impress, because she doesn't give a shit how he plays the game, and she asks what he's talking about. He says that she'll be just fine with the trip down the dark side, and so will he. But William instead parts ways with Logan and takes Dolores with him. So I like that he actually did have some common sense and decided to abandon Logan, because Logan wasn't going to do him any good. Logan wasn't doing what he wanted him to do, and I like in the end that these two are now separated. It's sad to see, but Logan is just way too focused on killing, and again, is way too casual about things that he shouldn't be too casual about, and overall, I'm looking forward to really seeing where this is all going to go. So Hector then begins his robbery of the Sweetwater Saloon. Pretty much the same scene we saw in episode 1. Nicks the painted black from Rolling Stones, which I did not realize was a cover by Rolling Stones. It's actually really sick the way they were able to do that, but he's immediately pulled aside by Maeve in what is by far one of the best scenes we've seen from the show. Tandy Newton and the guy who played Hector, let me think of his name, Giancarlo Esposito, there we go, Giancarlo Esposito, I think that's his name. He absolutely killed it in this scene. She killed as well. Just this scene in general was so so well acted. I love the way this was done. She points a gun right near his brain, says that she wants to talk. He asks what deal she wants to make. Obviously, he's taken aback by this. I mean, it's a pretty crazy way to greet someone, and she says that he's here for what's in the safe. He asks how she know that. She says she can always tell when a man wants something that's not on the menu, offers to give him the combination of the safe in exchange for answers, and he says that this world is madness. She says she wants to know what he knows about the man in hazmat suits, and Stubbs says to send the cavalry. Hector calls a hazmat suit shades sacred native lore, that they made figures of them, and she gives him a number. She asks what the shade does. He asks if she's seen it, and he says that they walk in between worlds to oversee their world. She gives him another number, and he asks if this is the last thing she needs because they need a little more time than the constabulary will allow. She says if she took that interest in him, he'd have to say in how long they needed whatsoever. She then pulls out a large knife and says she thought that she was crazy, but she got shot there, and he sees that there's no wound, but she was shot and the drawing was standing over her, and then it was as if it never happened, and obviously she knows that there's something going on. I mean, this clearly did happen, and she knows that someone's fucking with her, and she wants him to cut her right there, so she can see if there's a bullet fragment from the last time she got shot, which again is pretty genius. I love the way that Maeve is thinking about this, and Maeve really is probably one of the smartest characters on the show. I mean, even smarter than the people who are running Westworld, and he draws the knife, but then he stops himself, says he's not in the habit of cutting into defenseless women. He says he's some big bad outlaw, and he says, so the Dreamwalker said that there was some that he could see it, and it's a blessing from God to see the masters who pull his strings, and obviously he's talking about the fact that they're not really real. She says that they don't know what they're talking about. I'm getting the sense that Hector isn't real. I think that he, in fact, is an actor, and he knows that it's all fake, but Armistice is shot. The cavalry make her beg for mercy. The episode then ends with Hector. He pulls out the bullet, which means that Maeve wasn't hallucinating after all. They begin to make out, and a posse of sheriffs head into the saloon, shoots them both through the door. Maeve tells him none of this really matters, so she doesn't really care, and that is the way the episode ends. Really great stuff overall. Really loving where this season is headed, but let's just get in this episode overall, my predictions for the rest of the season. So overall, this episode for me was right up there with episode 1. I thought this was definitely a really great character-driven episode. What's going on with Maeve, I think, is going to happen pretty much with everyone very soon. I mean, the way that she's starting to figure out that, she's shot and the bullet is still inside of her, it shows that the damage is still there. They don't just get rid of it. Yes, they erase their memory, but the pain is still there. If there's shots or if they're stabbed, there is something in there that still feels it. I mean, they act like the way you or I would to that. I mean, if you or I were to get shot, we'd obviously feel it. Even if we couldn't actually see it, we would still feel that physical pain. That's something that Maeve is definitely still seeing. And word is definitely going to get out, and I think many of the other hosts are definitely going to start seeing that, and I'm looking forward to seeing where the way that's going to go. I'm really into William and Dolores right now. The way that he's caring for Dolores, the way he's treating her like an actual human being, and he's not just there to have sex with her, I think is overall a very compelling plot. I know a lot of people don't like Logan, but I think Logan is working as the antagonist of William's side of the story. I mean, Logan, clearly, he's just in this for money, he's just in this to have sex, and he's just looking for an escape, essentially. That's what he's looking for, which, yes, that is kind of what the park is going to give you. It's supposed to be an escape from the real world, but at the same time, he's not treating anything, in a human way. He's treating everything with probably some of the most, horrible decency you could think. He's not treating it with any decency whatsoever, while William at least tries to be somewhat decent to them, and I like seeing that overall. I like the different ways that these two handle things. I think it's definitely going to be a big part of the rest of the season, but we'll have to see where that's going to go. I really do love the way that their whole storyline is going. I think overall that's very interesting. As far as Ford, I really like seeing, how charismatic Ford really was. I mean, we already knew he was very charismatic, but just seeing how much he wants to be in control, and how he wants to play God, and how he's worried about everyone. When he's telling Bernard and Colin, get out of my way, he's saying, don't stop me from playing God. He wants to play God. He wants to be the mastermind behind all this, and the problem is that I don't know if Ford really is the guy to do it. I mean, yeah, he's the one that made this whole park, but he doesn't understand the full extent of what's going on. Bernard, however, I feel like does. Elsie's already telling him what's going on, and you're definitely starting to see that, and I feel like Ford's going to slowly realize that he can't really be the guy in charge for that much longer because he's not really in charge of these. He's not really, in charge of these, hosts right now. They're making their own decisions. They're doing what they want to do, and they're not really going by their scripts. And I think overall that's very interesting where that's headed. Hector definitely is not a host. I think he definitely is, in fact, a human. I don't know about that, but I think he is. Just the way he was talking to Maeve, it seemed to me that either he knew what was going on or that he in fact is a human. I think it's probably the latter. I think he is in fact a human, but we'll have to see. I really love the storyline with the Man in Black. The fact that now we know what the Man in Black wants, that he's there to find the proper ending, overall is really interesting. I mean, there's a lot of places you can go with that, and I don't know if this tattoo woman is legit, if this is really going to help him out, but I don't really know. We'll have to see. I think that overall is going to be very interesting. I like the way that Lawrence holds this grudge against the Man in Black, and it's understandable. When you kill a family like that, and someone who was so near and dear to Lawrence, and who he cared about so much, and he just, killed all of his family, obviously Lawrence is going to have an axe to grind. You definitely do see that, and already it seems like they're starting to turn on their masters, and you're definitely starting to see that here. I do like the way that that's done. It's going to be very creepy when it happens, but at the same time, I'm kind of rooting for the hosts. I mean, I feel bad for them, the way they're treating everything, and I'm looking forward to seeing the way that they actually do take them down, but we'll have to see. I think overall that's really interesting. Elsie, I like where Elsie is headed. I like that Elsie is definitely starting to get suspicious of what's going on. She is one of the most, I think, focused people right now. She's focused on, oh, there is something going on. You can't just ignore it. And I don't think Bernard is necessarily ignoring it. He just knows the situation's kind of out of his hands and he can't really do much about it. But overall, I'm looking forward to seeing really where that's going to go. I like that she now has this information. What she's going to do with this information, I don't really know. But that's going to be interesting as well. Just so many different places for the show to go. That's basically my review, guys. Let me know what you guys saw this episode. Loved your thoughts on it. There was so much great stuff going on this episode. Like I said, for me, this was tied with episode 1 as best episode of the season. I really do love the way that the show has headed so far. But that's my review. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll see you guys in my next, which will be for tonight's episode of Supergirl, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.